Hello and welcome once again to Let's Start Cooking. I'm Wayne and today we're going to make a delicious Boston cream pie. And the first thing we're going to want to start with is we're going to make the custard first. We're going to do this in steps. I'll have all the ingredients listed in the description as usual. But before we get started, I ask that you like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out and it helps us grow. So let's get started with this first. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to take 2 cups of milk and we're just going to add it right to our pan. And we want to heat this up till it just starts to boil. That's all we want to do with this. And once that gets to a boil, we're going to immediately take it off the heat and we're just going to set it to the side and we're going to let it cool. And then we're going to start with the rest of our custard. So we'll get this heated up and we'll be right back. As soon as you see bubbles starting to form around the edges, that's when you want to take this off. We're going to immediately remove this from the heat and we're just going to set this to the side. We're going to let that set to the side and we're just going to let it cool down a little bit because what we're going to do now is we're going to take 6 egg yolks, just the yolks, and we're going to take them in a bowl, and to that we're going to add our sugar. And we're going to whisk this until we get this completely incorporated. And we're just going to keep whisking this until we can get this smooth. It'll change color, it'll get nice and yellow. We're just going to keep whisking this for a little bit. We're not going to melt all this sugar because the eggs are at room temperature. They're not really warm, but we just want to get it all incorporated. And once we get this nice light color, what we're going to do is we're going to take cornstarch and we're going to sift that into our mixture. And the only reason we're sifting it is we don't want big lumps. I mean, we can always get them out later. Let me get the rest of this out. And cornstarch is funny because it likes to soak up moisture. And as soon as you put it in a dish, it wants to stick. But we're just going to take all this cornstarch and we're going to sift this through just to get these big lumps broken up. And we're going to whisk this again until we get all the lumps out. Once we get to the point where you don't see any lumps, what we're going to want to do is we're going to come back to our milk mixture. And we only want to add about 1/4 cup at a time of the hot milk because we don't want to scramble the eggs that are in this bowl. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly incorporate this. And all we're really trying to do is temper the eggs so we don't end up with scrambled eggs. We're going to slowly bring these up to temperature. Because we want to keep this a custard. We don't want to turn this into an omelet. Once we get everything mixed up and we added the rest of our milk into our egg mixture, we dump it back into our pot and we're going to cook this on low and we're going to constantly whisk this until it starts to thicken up. And we don't want this to boil, but we want it to get nice and thick. So we're just going to turn the heat up to low. And we want to keep this moving because remember, it does have milk and eggs in it. We don't want it to scald to the bottom. So we're just going to mix this up, and as we're doing this, we're going to add in our tablespoon of vanilla. And again, we're just going to keep mixing this, and this is going to get really thick on us. This is what's going to turn into our custard. As you can see how it starts to really start to thicken up, and that's what we want. It's starting to get real nice and thick on us. And you just want to be careful with the heat because as it thickens up, it's going to want to stick to the bottom, and we don't want that to happen. So we're just going to cook this for about a minute more, and then we're going to take this out, and we're going to put it into another bowl. We're going to cover this with saran wrap, and we're going to stick it in the refrigerator for a little bit. But you can see how nice and thick it's getting. This is turning into the custard that we want. Once we get it to this point and we see it's nice and thickened, we're going to take our butter and we're just going to add our butter into it and let that melt in. And again, we took it off the heat because we don't want this to burn now. You're gonna mix all that in together. Once we get it to the butter melted and we get all this nice and done, we're just gonna take this and we're just gonna transfer it right to another bowl. Because all we wanna do now is we're gonna cover this and we're gonna put this in the refrigerator to chill. And it's gonna even get thicker as it chills. We're gonna slowly cover this with saran wrap, but what we wanna do is we wanna push this not into, but just gently down onto the top, because what we want is we don't want that skin to develop that you get on top of custard. So we just wanna gently just touch the surface with it. That's all. Just so it touches it so we don't get that skin. And now we're just gonna put this in the refrigerator and we're gonna let this chill while we get ready to make our cake. While we're waiting for our custard to cool down, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna work on our cake. And the first thing that we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna take our flour and we're just gonna put it in a nice sized bowl. We're gonna take our salt and we're gonna take our baking powder. And again, I will have all the ingredients in the description. And we're just gonna give this a quick mix just to make sure everything gets mixed up. Just mix it up. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our eggs and we're gonna take our sugar, and we're gonna use a whisk attachment, and if you don't have one, you can use a hand mixer, or you can even do this by hand. We're just gonna take our 2 eggs, we're just gonna crack them in our bowl, and I'm using large eggs. And we're just gonna add our sugar right on in, nothing fancy. And we're just gonna add our whisk. And we're just gonna put this on medium for about 4 minutes. We wanna make this nice and fluffy, and it's gonna change color, it's gonna get like a nice yellow. We'll start out slow. And we're just gonna let this mix up for about 4 minutes. And while we're doing that, we're going to take our 1/2 cup of milk and the butter that we have, which is 5 tablespoons of butter. And we're going to actually add this to our milk. And we're going to put this in the microwave for about 30 seconds at a time to melt this butter. And just so we see the milk is starting to steam. That's about all we want to do with this. So we'll get this all melted up, get this mixed up, and we'll be right back. Once we get this all mixed up, it's been about 4 minutes, and we've melted our butter, and we heated up our milk. All we're gonna do is we're gonna put this on low, and we're just gonna slowly incorporate the flour into our batter. So we just want this mixed up. That's all we wanna do. We don't wanna go real nuts by pouring all this in. So we're just gonna do it a little bit at a time. Because this is going to get really thick on us, and we don't want to end up with dry spots in the batter. We're just going to slowly incorporate it. And once we get this all in, we're going to make sure it mixes up, just so it's mixed up. And then we're going to slowly add our milk mixture. And we're going to do this slow. And when we're all done, this should look almost like pancake batter. And this is about the time that you're going to want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. We know that it's been mixed up. We want to scrape down the sides, just make sure there's no flour sticking anywhere. As you can see, we got a little bit on the sides. We're just going to mix it all up, and then we're going to add in our vanilla at this time. And we're gonna let this mix for a little bit longer. Once we have everything mixed up, we scrape down our bowl and just make sure there's no flour on the bottom. And once we know that there's nothing wrong, we're just gonna take this and we're gonna split this amongst 2 pans. And it's gonna look like it's thin, but this is gonna puff up really a lot for us because this is basically a sponge cake. And now we're gonna bake these for about 30 minutes. Again, we're gonna do the toothpick. We're just gonna stick it in the center. When it comes out clean, we know that these are done. So we'll get these in the oven and we'll bake these for about 30 minutes. Okay, we've baked our cakes for about 30 minutes. We've took them out and we've left them cool. And then we flipped them out and we laid them on a wire rack. And we let them completely cool while our custard was cooling. And now that everything's cooled off, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take one layer of our cake. We're just gonna set it down on our plate. We're gonna take our custard. And what you wanna do with this is we're gonna set this in the center. We don't wanna spread this all the way to the sides. We're just gonna put this in the center of the cake. Because what we wanna do is we want to try to keep this as close to center as possible. And you might not need it all, but we want to make sure we made enough of it. It's going to slowly work its way out to the side, and this is where you have to be careful. Because we don't want to put so much. And if you get a little bit that comes out the sides, you're okay. You don't want to get too close to the edge because what we're going to do is we're going to try to keep this. Okay. Once we do that, all we're going to do is take our second top and we're going to gently just lay it and press gently. Try to get that to come out to the edge. And just lightly press, because like I said, we don't want it to just spill out. That's it. And if you get too much of starch to come out, you can always take a knife and just get some of the excess off. But we're just going to press it down just slightly. And once we get this pressed down to where we're about even where we want, and like I said, it's not going to come out. You are dealing with pudding, a custard, so you're not going to get a nice perfect edge. You just press this down just a little bit. Now once we get this pressed down, what we're going to want to do is we're going to put this back in the refrigerator for a good hour or two to let this really set up. And then we'll just finish it off with our ganache that we're going to put across the top. So we'll put this back in the refrigerator for a couple hours and we'll be back. We have about 15 minutes left while we're chilling the cake in the freezer. What we're going to do now is we're going to make the topping, the chocolate topping for it. And all we do is we're just going to take a 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream. And we're going to take, we have semi-sweet chocolate. You can use bittersweet or you can use semi-sweet. The only difference is bittersweet chocolate has 70% cocoa and semi-sweet has 60%. And we're just going to break this up and put it right in our heavy cream. Because what we want to do is we're just going to stick this in the microwave. I'm going to stick it in there, we're going to melt this all together, and basically all we're doing is we're making a ganache. And that's just chocolate and heavy whipping cream. So we just break this up, and we're using 4 ounces of chocolate. And we're only going to do this like 20 seconds at a time. We don't want to just turn this on and let it go because we want to make sure that we don't boil the milk. So we'll get this in the microwave, we'll get this melted up for you. All right, our cake is cooled down, and we took our ganache and we just melted it to the point where it can flow very easily. And all we're gonna do now is just dump this right in the center, and we're gonna help it go. Now, if you wanted to do this and you wanted to make it look restaurant style, and you want it to be perfect, what I would suggest is you get yourself what they call a spring-form pan. You can bake the cake right in this, take it out when it's cool, cut the cake in half, and you can put it back in, put your custard layer on, put your cake, and then put it in the freezer, and then take your ganache and dump it over while it's still in here, put it back in and let it freeze, and when you take this pan off, everything will be nice and smooth and it'll look beautiful. But we're not doing that right now. We're showing everybody that you can do this without all the equipment that you need. So what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna take our ganache and we're just gonna put it right over the top. And we're just gonna help it go around. And if it goes down the edges, we don't care. We're not worrying about that. We just want to get every little piece covered if we can. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this back in the freezer and we're going to let this chill. You can let this chill overnight if you want it nice and set up before you cut this, because it is still going to be a little soft. We're just going to get as much of this as we can out. And we're just going to help it go to the edges. Now, if you want this really, really shiny, when you melt this, you can add a little bit of corn syrup, and that's going to make this stay shiny. Because as this starts to set up, it's not going to be real shiny. I just don't prefer using corn syrup. But we're just going to help this gently go to the sides. And if it runs down, like I said, it's no big deal to us. My family doesn't mind if we get extra chocolate. Just take your time, go around, just right to the edge. It's a lot of time in a refrigerator when it comes to setting this up, because you want to make sure everything stays nice and chilled, that's all. That's basically all there is to it. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the freezer. We're going to leave this in overnight because we're in no hurry. We're going to leave this in overnight. You can put this in for a couple hours. I would just let it chill before you want to start cutting into it. Make sure it's nice and set up. But that's all you have to do. That's your Boston cream. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll like and subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends. And I hope I see you next week. Until then, I hope you have a great day.